Hi, I'm Larry Hama, and you're listening to Talking Joes.
Comics to read, my friends, set you back 3.99 cents. Dive deep, but don't forget, reading Joe's got no regrets. Taking 2 hours to lift your gloom with the latest issue to consume on paper, on a screen. We're talking some Joe. Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe comics podcast, where today we will be looking at G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 315, which came out just this week, the 26th of March, 2025. The fate of Cobra Commander. Destro plots revenge against the man who injured the one woman he loves, but other enemies may not be far behind. That was what the synopsis told us we could expect from this issue, but did we actually get it, and what did we think? Let's find out in a minute and discover it together along with my regular co-host. It's a Real American Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers. 315.
And live viewers as well. So once again, we are doing this as a live stream, so do feel free to chip in with your thoughts and comments. Right, perfect. So I don't think we had anything especially to cover from last time that I can recall. I always feel like I must be forgetting something, but I don't think we've got
announcements of new covers for second or third prints. There's no announcement of a next trade paperback collection.
Don't think so. Don't think anything too exciting like that.
Okay, we can just talk about 315.
315 came to us from the creative team of writer Larry Hama, artist Chris Mooneyham, colorist Francesco Segala, with Sabrina del Grosso as the flatter. He's just someone employed to just tell him how, by Francesco, to say how great he is. That's the flatterer. Letterer, Pat Brousseau. Editor, Alex Antone. We know that
Alex Antone.
Anton. Not Antone. Because I said Antone was definitely out. Okay.
Folks,
now I'm lost.
Folks, we have spoken with editor Alex Antone and asked him how to pronounce his name, and we're going to get it mostly right from now on. Mostly right.
See, I had mentally scrubbed out Antone because it's not a hard E, but there we go. I'm going to need to listen back and double check. Is it Anton or Antone?
It's Antone, and that's the main reason I am here, to officially correct the pronunciation of my name.
He's the guy. He's the editor, and we have spoken to him and recorded an interview with him, which we will be releasing very soon. Publication design comes from Jillian Crabb and Richard Mercado. Creative consultant Diana Davis.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A is drawn by Andy Kubert with colors by Brad Anderson. Wait, that's not right. No,
it's not. It's Laura Martin.
Okay, so the credits on the inside front cover are incorrect. We have
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
We have heard that Brad Anderson has an exclusive at Ghost Machine, which is the Jeff Johns and many other people imprint, which is publishing through Image. So Brad Anderson is coloring Geiger and some other books there. The signature on the cover under Andy Kubert's name on 315 is Laura, for Laura Martin, who did color the previous issue's cover. Okay, so this is Cobra Commander in that new costume, which was used in comics continuity for the first time last issue of this story, which was 313, right? Maybe the business to remind everyone that was nagging at the back of your brain a minute ago, Mark, was that 314 was a one-issue fill-in, and we took a pause from this ongoing story, and now we're coming back to it and wrapping it up. Okay, so this cover is Cobra Commander down, kneeling as far down, like doing a downward dog, but his butt is up against a wall, right? One knee is touching the ground, his boots are on the ground, and he's leaning so far forward that his nose, his chin are just a foot off the ground, but his arms are behind him, diagonally up, and his wrists and his neck are shackled with giant, I can only describe these as like lost props from a 1980s G.I. Joe animated miniseries, right? This is a visual that is such a fun exaggeration for the comic book, but actually seems sort of in keeping with the 80s cartoon. Very thick chain links. There are even some orange buttons on Cobra Commander's neck collar. Mm-hmm. His black costume is torn. The silver battle mask portion in front of his face is cracked just a bit. You can see one eye that's in a bit of a cast shadow and looking directly at you. This Cobra Commander is not happy. And he's not happy at you, folks. The pillar behind Cobra Commander and the ground beneath him are stone with mortar between all these stones. The background is a pale greenish. The version that Mark has on screen is more like grass green, a dark grass green that goes to black, and the printed copy I'm holding is more of a sort of an olive drab green. The colors overall, except for these sort of 3 bits of red on Cobra Commander's costume, on this cover are pretty desaturated, these are not bold, bright colors. And I was thinking this cover would have a completely different feel if Laura Martin were coloring this as a blue Cobra Commander costume, right? Which we have seen on this run of covers, this Cobra Commander in a blue costume. The light source is above Cobra Commander, or there are all these very, very slightly sort of hazy highlights on the top of his helmet, on the top of his bicep, on the top of his knee, on the top of these chains. Laura Martin's a super talented color artist, and I'm still bowled over that she's doing G.I. Joe covers. This is not my preferred approach for a cover for G.I. Joe. I would like some more sort of primary colors. I would like a little more pop, but certainly the lighting and color approach here is really dramatic, and it is quite different from previous issues. They all look good next to each other on a shelf, on a rack. This cover, in terms of Kubert's anatomy and perspective, is this is such a silly thing to say. This is such an Andy Kubert cover. I've been thinking about this, Mark, since we talked to editor Alex Antone, and also previous episodes where we're just talking about Andy Kubert covers. Andy Kubert's characters, their muscles are flexed and taut. Their cores are engaged. And this is not a passive prisoner Cobra Commander who's slumped over. He's not tired. If he's been beaten, he is defiant. This is like dynamic anatomy Bern Hogarth Cobra Commander, right? This is like Bart Sears Wizard Magazine Brute and Babe Cobra Commander, right? These muscles are all in use, and his heart is pumping and the blood is flowing, and the tension with those arms, the sort of exaggeration, the camera angle looking up a bit. It's what Andy Kubert does so well. And, you know, when I see it on Batman, I see it on Superman, I see it on Wolverine, I think, well, yeah. And then I see it on G.I. Joe, and it's sort of like, oh my gosh, right? It's like, I'm not going to finish this sentence with a coherent thought. It's wonderful and really punchy. Okay, cover B is that same image in black and white, and What's really great here is you can see a lot of work and detail that Kubert is doing in his inking technique, in his hatching, in his cross hatching, in his stippling, in his directional lines, in that background, whatever the light source is in the background on the left as it goes from bright to dark. It's the stones on the right under the blue stripe of the G.I. Joe logo, Cobra Commander's helmet, his waist, pelvis, that boot, where Kubert is describing these things that are different textures and different kinds of shadow. And then color artist Laura Martin gets to obscure them more or less with her colors. There's just a lot of descriptive mark making. And yet they're like very bold and satisfying spotted blacks. I think I do like the black and white one more than the color one. The color one, not my preferred approach. I would like brighter, bolder covers, but it is dramatic. Cover C is drawn and colored by Francis Portela. This is another of these, quote, camouflage covers where the outline of a character disappears so that their dominant color, in this case, Cobra Commander's blue. This is would you say this is 1982 original?
Yeah, close enough.
Battle mask. It's not hooded. It's not battle armor. It's not a new version. It's not updated. The blue of Cobra Commander's jacket becomes the blue of the background. So there isn't a line which delineates where his torso is in front of the background, where his arm is in front of the background. Mark's...
It's interestingly in the black and white line art, he has drawn in those lines, and then it's in the color process that they get dropped out. So just in terms of an approach, sort of design first, color.
Have I mentioned this? There's this moment in an episode of Muppet Babies from like 1986 where Kermit holds a green piece of paper behind him, and the animators sort of on purpose stopped drawing the black outlines, and so the green of Kermit's arms and face becomes the green of the paper. And he's doing this fun little demo about like imagination, and I remember thinking when I saw that as a kid, awesome. Just one last thing about these Francis Portela covers. Although I'm describing it as a dominant color where the background color is all just one color, there's no background space or texture, and it becomes, Duke's mustard shirts, Stalker's green camo, Cobra Commander's blue uniform. Portela is still doing a lot of really nice, subtle line work and a bit of color work to show the textures and the fabric of Cobra Commander's costume. Cobra Commander is not here wearing sort of a generic, any costume, sort of uber all costume material. He's wearing a very specific material, right? It's not burlap, it's not silk, it's not chrome metal, right? It's like a cotton or, polyester fabric. And you can see sort of in the thickness of the collar, and some of these very subtle white highlights on the collar and on the arm and sort of near his stomach over the belt. Mark, are there any retailer variant covers for this issue?
We have 3. So first up, I've got John Hebert with the second in his series here. This is spotlighting some 1983 characters. So up front there, we can see Doc, Snowjob, Gung Ho, a Cobra, was that officer, Major Blood, Cobra Commander, Destro, a Hiss Tank, a Wolverine, Fang, Dragonfly, Sky Strikers, Covergirl, Tripwire. So fitting in a lot in this sort of Marvel handbook style with these troops sort of marching from left to right.
Can I just say they're all running, but Doc is walking quickly, which is a really fun difference. Okay, so there's a Cobra Fang, which is on fire. And for the color version, it has been rotated about 20 degrees, so it's not covered up by the logo.
Oh, yeah.
Just a small change. And I don't think there's no controversy here. I think Hebert, or whoever colored it, thought, oh, there's a logo there. I need to move this.
And it looks like there's sort of some crossover between this cover and the last one. You could see in the line work, the sort of the turret of the I guess, Mobat sort of poking in from the left, but in the published version, it looks like that's cropped in a bit more tightly so that some of that overlap isn't quite there. And I think this is a foil variant, and here on the MB Artist website, which is where you can get this cover, they've sort of got a checklist showing an intent, 82 tick, 83 tick, and then 84 through to 90 still locked. So I think looks like there's an intent there to keep on going with this theme.
If this is your first or second Talking Joe, you've already missed Mark reaching out to artist John Hebert to get a little audio snippet where Mr. Hebert tells us about drawing that cover for the 1982 character lineup for that previous variant, which Mark inserted into a previous episode of Talking Joe. Mark will leave no stone unturned.
No Joe unturned. Yeah. So next up, we've got a cool sort of painted style here from Mark Spears with Destro and the Dreadnoks. And this one, funnily enough, comes in 6 variants. So you've got Zartan and the Dreadnoks with trade dress, virgin, and virgin foil. But then you've also got as the same version of that trade dress, virgin foil, but with Zartan showing his blue sun effect on his skin. So yeah, nicely done. It's not a million miles away from sort of what we've seen from what's his name?
Mike Mayhew?
Mike Mayhew, thank you.
Yeah.
Mike Mayhew, Alex Ross, that sort of family of art.
I think, Mark, if I can add, I think what you're seeing is photo reference. These look like real people, where an artist is trying to draw the specific faces of real people. They don't look like sort of stock facial types. And then yes, the rendering and color quality of the paint.
And then the final retailer variant we have this week, we talked about last time because of the connection to the contents of the story in issue 314, which featured Tunnel Rat and Tripwire as some of the Joe team on that mission. This has those characters front and center on the front cover. From Mike Choi, brought to us by Big Alpaca Comics. This is called an EOD Warrior variant. So it features the 2 explosive ordnance disposal technicians. Tunnel Rat Tripwire came out 26th of March, and proceeds of the comic were going to the EOD Warrior Foundation.
Mark, what is this vehicle? What's this vehicle behind the 2 Joes?
So I think this is quite inspired by the classified look. This particular cover, you can see it from the weapon that Tunnel Rat is carrying, which very much looks like his classified weapon, and Tripwire is in this big, heavy armor from the EOD type. What was the name of that film? All about the EOD people in the Middle East. Won an Oscar.
I just had it. Yeah, hold on. I can do this.
Help our memories in the comments. See if you can beat Tim's Google skills. Yep. I want to say like Kill List, something like that, or Hurt Locker.
Yep,
Hurt Locker.
Good.
There we go. Oh, I just beat Justin Taylor there by a fraction of a second there.
610 Daddy also got that answer right.
And Matthew there trailing in third place, I'm afraid, Matthew. But thanks all the same. So in the front is this sort of tracked device used by Tripwire with his remote control. So like a remote
bomb
explosive sort of disbomb.
Robot.
Yeah. Unit thing.
It's got a camera and a mechanical arm.
Yeah. And so this is the one that came with the classified figure, and it had a name, McLeod, which may or may not have been inspired by Chris McLeod of the Full Force. But interestingly,
did they spell it right?
They spelt it slightly differently, but that may also have been intentional. But I think that a similar, robot EOD, device thing, was also released a few years ago with, was it Tunnel Rats? So there's sort of precedent for that featuring in the line as well. I will just share an image of the robot that came with Tunnel Rats version 12 from as featured on Yo Joe. So that was a discovery for me that the first time this sort of device came with tripwire was not the first time that we saw it in G.I. Joe.
All right. And the vehicle in the back, this is a
Ooh.
modern, realistic U.S. Armed Forces vehicle that does not have an analog in G.I. Joe toys.
I believe not. Yeah, this looks like a real world vehicle of some description. So yeah, it's quite obscured. So but intentionally so. I think interestingly enough, we had an interview with someone not too long ago who said, actually, it doesn't even necessarily matter too much. Exactly what is in the background is sometimes the hint of what it might suggest is possibly enough.
I'll say one thing about this drawing. Mike Choi, the artist, is the line weight is the same for everything. The line that is around the McLeod in the foreground, the lines that are around Tunnel Rat's arms and his bullets, and the lines that are describe the vehicle in the background. So this is an example of the clear line style, as different from, say, Andy Kubert inking, where there are thin lines and medium lines and thick lines.
Very good.
Plot breakdown?
Plot breakdown.
Deep under a castle in Scotland, Destro is holding Cobra Commander as his captive as revenge for the shooting of his beloved Baroness. She is to be treated by the surgical team that he has flown in. An Iron Grenadier sends an update from Springfield. Regular Cobras, as well as the mutant cyborgs, have been rounded up. Meanwhile, Alpha 001 has taken over the Cobra Casino on Cobra Island. They supply the casino patrons with an antidote, but they also set off a detonation device which blows up the heads of the remaining mutant Cobras, both on Cobra Island and also in Springfield. Elsewhere, washing up on a Pensacola beach are the Joes, who have previously escaped Cobra Island with Mindbender and a Serpentor on ice. While the Joes are held by local law enforcement, Mindbender is able to make an escape. At Fort Wadsworth, the Joe team returns to the pit and are reunited with Sean Collins, aka Throwdown. And finally, Destro reveals to Cobra Commander that the Baroness's operation was a success, and so is moving on to a different discussion, the future of the relationship between Cobra and Mars. So there we go, Tim. Quite the issue.
Yeah, this is an issue where some plot threads are concluded or concluded for now. Certainly the invasion of Springfield and the cyborgs that are there, or the mutants that are there, I'm getting mixed up, and the zombie virus of all of the tourists at the casino, the four Joes plus the captive Dr. Mindbender, them getting back to the States, getting back to dry land. I don't know if this is fully wrapped up, but it's wrapped up enough that if these four were not to show up again and someone else sort of talks about Dr. Mindbender in an issue or two, that would be fine with me. And sort of the thing that I thought would get more wrapped up, which doesn't, is Destro and Cobra Commander. And you alluded to that, perhaps inadvertently, in your opening, because the solicit for this issue appears to suggest or promise a bigger change. The 2 issues ago when Destro had this big fight with Cobra Commander, and it was the cover, and we talked about it, and it was sort of the main thing that happened in that issue. Destro was really angry, but also very much in control, sort of a calm angry. And the Joes and Zartan knew to sort of stand by and sort of let it unfold. And I appreciate that Hama has Destro ease off from his anger or rage because the surgery is a success. And so maybe Destro doesn't need to exact sort of the fullest revenge. But I did think that Destro, yelling at Cobra Commander, punching Cobra Commander, killing him, taking something that was his very specifically, or destroying more things of his would happen in this issue. And it's almost that the Destro Cobra Commander scenes in this issue sort of put all that on pause. And it, I guess, will happen in a future issue.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression reading that sort of the way that it concluded, that the fact that the Baroness, has come through this surgery and it looks like she'll be okay, in a very G.I. Joe the movie end of kind of way. The fact that she will be A-okay kind of very much turns that dynamic right around, and now it's much more about, okay, she's all right, I'm not going to take revenge, but what's this going to mean for our relationship going forward? Yeah, the phrase that he uses there is, we may now entertain a serious dialogue about the future of the relationship betwixt Cobra and Mars. So it suggests to me it's like, okay, that other thing, let's put that to one side, let's move on and figure out what we can now do together, working together once again. Although clearly there's a slight power dynamic difference here. He's negotiating from strength, let's say.
It wasn't that long ago that you and I read and spoke about on Talking Joe the final 12-part arc of the Devil's Due run from 2007, World War III. And in that story, that Cobra Commander takes control of Mars. And that was in the back of my mind here because Destro's dialogue with the Betwixt that you just quoted on the final page of this new issue 315 started to suggest to me the opposite of that. And I'm sure I'm taking it too far. I'm sure Destro's not going to take control of Cobra and oust Cobra Commander.
But he might. He might.
But if not that, then what? As a kid, I saw that Destro's toy package said enemy weapons supplier, and there's like one direct reference to it in the first 10 episodes. And certainly at the beginning of the first episode of G.I. Joe, Destro was delivering some weapons stuff, some fuels to Cobra Commander. But Destro in the cartoon seems a lot like the Baroness and Major Blood, sort of just another general or major in Cobra, like just the number 2. And that was always fine with me as a kid. And I've always been interested in the places where other G.I. Joe stories more carefully use that difference, that Cobra Commander is Cobra Commander. And Destro is not necessarily a leader in Cobra. He sells Cobra stuff. So I don't know where this is going. I'm still angry at Cobra Commander for having his person shoot the Baroness, and I want to feel some of this revenge, and Cobra Commander being chained up in an uncomfortable place isn't enough revenge for me because I'm a bad person. I want him to suffer for what he did. But I also appreciate that Hama often has characters not seek revenge, and Destro is doing that here. He's backing off. In some ways, this is a really good example of the cover being a real exaggeration of and tease for what happens or almost happens in the comic. Like this isn't just Cobra Commander like holding a globe of of the world in front of a big computer monitor. This isn't Cobra Commander in front of a giant Cobra sculpture with like a brazier and a big flame. He's not sitting on a throne. This isn't Cobra Commander and Duke grappling sort of nowhere, anywhere. This is specifically Cobra Commander chained up in a place with many stones, which, I don't know, could be a castle. And his costume's all torn, like he's just been in a fight. And it might be in the sort of story logic of the cover just after their fight 2 issues ago. Might be after Destro or some Destro people have roughed him up a bit. But I want Cobra Commander to be punished, and I would like the dynamic of Destro doing something new, taking Cobra over or something. Okay, back to you, Mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll sort of rewind a little bit because I think my spider sense of the thing that I forgot has been pointed out to me by Matthew Matson here, who says, I did an action figure variant of the EOD cover, and here it is. So, yeah, great work, Matthew. That's a great recreation of the 315 cover using the classified toys. And he also did the 314 cover as a recreation, and another one as well, an action figure version of the panel with Destro walking across the parapet with the helicopter. So excellent work. Hats off. So I just wanted to stop there, defeat the tingle that had been in the back of my head, and also call that out before
that other image that we're talking about here, Destro walking across the parapet with the helicopter. That's page 3, panel 2 of this new issue 315. All right, so Mark, what are your other broad reactions to this issue, or do you want to get into specifics?
I had one main reaction to that, which is to think about House of M, the conclusion, as Scarlet Witch says, if you're not an X-Men reader, she says at the end of this X-Men story, no more mutants, and uses her magic to get rid of virtually all of the mutants from the face of the planet. And indeed, to some degree, that's what happened in this particular issue. It felt like a real tidying up, cleaning house, really trying to, just tidy up the previous issues running up to this point, this extended Cobra Island story, and particularly the mutant story that started with issue 301, and with that sort of detonator, the pop of the heads, and also that serum being given to those casino goers on Cobra Island and returning them back to normal, very neatly sort of restoring a lot of the sort of status quo and sort of moving on beyond this mutant storyline.
I'm gonna take those 2 words of yours, moving on, and extrapolate, because I was thinking this. I think what you're saying is not just that those subplots are wrapped up, but do you get the sense that Hama will not return to them? That no one's going to talk about?
Yeah, specifically the mutant bits. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, no one's going to talk about mutants after this. Because in your analogy to a 2005 Marvel X-Men and Avengers miniseries, many stories since House of M have either mentioned House of M, returned to House of M, tried to undo House of M, or undone House of M. And I don't foresee in 5 issues Dr. Mindbender saying, I have another mutant bomb, or one mutant who got away from the casino and they didn't cure in issue 315 shows up somewhere and causes trouble. That Hama is thinking, that I think what we're thinking is that Hama is thinking, okay, that's done. And it's done. And when we won't go back to it.
And pop, 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 pop. That's the end of that, essentially. The one remaining bit from this storyline, which isn't quite resolved, is the Dr. Mindbender aspect, because he is still roaming about in a mutantized state.
And cyborg.
Dr. Mindbender, is he a cyborg? Oh, he is, isn't he? Because he does a thing out of his arm.
Yeah, on
good
page 15, he has this sort of he has these two very, very wide syringes. They look like, those miniature Coke cans that are like 6 ounces. And each of them has a needle sticking out of it. And they're on like not a wrist launcher, but like a forearm launcher. And he says, a wee bit of revenge technology I picked up in a trade, a tranquilizer missile launcher.
Mm.
And so those are, I think, sort of inside his arm, like they've folded out of his arm. I don't know that they were.
I think so.
Because if you go back 2 pages, he doesn't have any metal thing on his arm when he's screaming, "They are terrorists." Okay, so I think that Hama created a problem for himself and is somewhat tying it up, because if you have zombies want to kill people in a general sense or eat human flesh in a specific sense. And I do think that can happen in a G.I. Joe story. There have been zombie action figures in G.I. Joe. And like, this is not a Walking Dead homage. This is not like a Skybound cute thing. So I think you can have this sort of PG-13 storyline in a PG-13 book. I don't know if a lot of readers want it. And considering all of the times in the last 14 issues, we've cut back to Serpentor Khan or Mindbender or like random zombies, and they haven't said something like, I'm hungry, I need to like kill someone's dog and eat it, or like, let's go to a populated city and like wreak havoc, because that's sort of a different comic. And so I think Hama like created an idea for himself with this zombie bomb and then didn't want to continue with it. And there were several issues where we did cut back to zombie characters and they weren't saying like, oh, I got to be a zombie. They were, Serpentor Khan and Mindbender were just talking strategy. And was there one moment where some Joes said we have to keep them away from that city, or they're going to Springfield, it's a problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They wanted to kind of, when they were teeing it up, I think it might be in issue 302, they sort of opened up the issue with kind of like a zombie hellscape kind of thing, and it looked like they're all eating each other. And part of the plot was that they would go to Springfield as a way of widening their menu almost, because they're running out of people to eat on Cobra Island. So, but then they sort of did seem to kind of dial back on that a little bit, and it was more the kind of the mutated aspect and more of just an invading force, and it seemed like there was less and less kind of weight being put on the kind of the more of that flesh-eating aspect. But I think it's been a fun jaunt, this sort of, and very different to what we've seen with G.I. Joe before, with this whole mutant thing. And by sort of tying it up in a bow in this issue, you kind of get the best of both worlds. That we've had this fun, different storyline. For the people that enjoyed it, great. And for the people who are less enthusiastic about this particular spin on G.I. Joe, it has sort of drawn a line underneath it and sort of allows us to return back to more typical areas with the military special missions or the ninja adventures or whatever else that we'll get next.
In one of the letter's responses, editor Alex Antone says, the mutant virus bomb was actually a plot point set up at a previous publisher. We can't take credit for that one. Which may be him saying, we're glad you enjoy it. It actually wasn't our idea, which I think slightly sidesteps the issue, because I feel like a lot of times Larry Hama has an idea and whoever the editor is, they say, okay, that could be an IDW editor 2 years ago. That could be a Skybound editor right now. And maybe Alex Antone has said to Larry Hama in the last, 2 years, like, oh, you want to wrap up the zombie thing, or how do we diminish the zombie thing? How do we lessen it? But a thing I like about it and a thing I don't like about it. The thing I don't like about it is that it's not quite G.I. Joe for me, but you can do it because there have been zombie characters in G.I. Joe toys. And, back during the Andrew Wildman run, a Toxo Viper does fall into a vat of goo, and Hama never then turned that character into a Toxo zombie, which was an action figure, and that would have been the origin. And I'm not saying that there should be like a missing issue that tells that story, but like it is in the storyline already, and there have been toys. My problem is that I think G.I. Joe would have a different response. I think there are more G.I. Joe characters like Lifeline, and I guess Doc is dead, and Stretcher, and who like the Mega Marines, right? And like I don't think a lot of people are asking for the Mega Marines or the Eco Warriors to show up. But I do think someone who's looking over the wide swath of G.I. Joe characters and specialties would find a way to have the G.I. Joe response be more specific to this threat. And I feel like the response has been Duke and Mainframe and Psych Out in the computer room underground at the pit in Utah saying like, oh, we got to respond to this, which is often a response to many G.I. Joe problems. So I want it to be more specific to G.I. Joe.
Because it's primarily been really a sort of a Cobra civil war, really, hasn't it? With the Joes much more on the sidelines. And given, this is G.I. Joe, as the title of this book, and it's unusual that we're at 315, and this is the same story with 314 as a one shot aside, has been very much one single story stretching from essentially 301 through to 315, and also stepping back a bit, probably the 10 issues before that with the Cobra Casino kind of storyline as well. So it's been a long running kind of story, which is quite unusual for G.I. Joe to have a thread going, rather than it sort of just being more of a tangential, maybe subplot running through a story like, what are the mysteries of Snake Eyes? Just a single kind of story sort of stretching with such a distinct through line is quite unusual.
G.I. Joe comics don't cut to the White House. We don't see the president. We don't really see other parts of the U.S. military. We've seen the jugglers once or twice. There's a general who's higher up than Hawk in a lot of the comics. So I don't know that we need to see a scene in this G.I. Joe story where we cut to like NIH in DC and Maryland, or like news reporters saying like, we're getting reports of a sickness spreading in a small American town. I think there are ways that Hama would not respond to this story because they actually don't fall in the purview of his G.I. Joe comic. But I do think that like somewhat like Duke in the pit could turn to Mainframe and Psych Out and say, I just got a call from NIH and they're like medical evacing an experimental medicine. I want you to get some guys together and take it to Springfield and stab it in someone's arm. Or, as I said before, Mega Marines, or, Flint could say, I've dealt with some toxic waste briefly, but, like everyone's sort of forgetting that or choosing not to use it.
Chris makes a point about that he'd like to see a subplot with the jugglers with a bit of a comeback, maybe a clash with G.I. Joe and the higher ups, and you could see that the story potentially going that kind of way, like when we had issue 50 and the original invasion of Springfield and the fallout as a result of that. Potentially, when there's something as disastrous as a mutant invasion of a city town somewhere in America, with the carnage that has been presented here, potentially there could be some fallout of like, Joe's, it's your job to sort of manage all of this stuff, and we've had a kind of out and out zombie apocalypse warfare on the streets of an American city, and you've kind of only stood at the sidelines. Could be an area, but I don't know that necessarily Hama is going to want to go there.
I had said there was the thing I didn't like about it, and a thing I did, and the thing I like about it is what you alluded to, that Hama wraps it up quickly, but in a way that does make sense. It's a little Deus Ex Machina that Alpha 001 pushes a button and the two problems are now over, right? Oh, we have a cure and we have some bombs and all the old people are okay and all the cyborgs are gone. That's pretty convenient. And part of me thought, I don't know about that. But at the same time, this is a dangerous artificial intelligence. And I think both those two things definitely could have been already in the works. And Hama sort of pulls it out of his hat and says, no, see, there, it's done. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I want to talk about, there's something in the dialogue on page 4, which I wanted to ask you about, Mark.
Okay.
Destro is taking Dr. Gretchen Meyer into this room where the Baroness is in a hospital bed. And Destro says, the operating room has been prepped. She is still in a coma. The bullet is still lodged in a precarious place near a vital organ. And I thought, oh, do we remember from 2 issues ago where she was shot? And then I thought, why is Destro not being specific here? And I think I'm just sort of nitpicking, but this sort of reminds me of like how Hama or a writer might sort of describe Springfield without saying what state it's in, or like it's like, well, we don't want to say a specific country in Europe or Asia, so we're going to describe it like a small oil producing country in Central Asia, right? Or like a Southeast Asian jungle nation. And then I thought, wait, do we know? Is it her heart? Is it her lungs? This just seems a little bit of a word balloon vagueness.
Yeah, a vagueness where there doesn't necessarily have to be a vagueness, but I mean, it wasn't a it wasn't a sucking chest wound, because I would have remembered that, I'm sure, but
Fact Checking Joe here with a fact check saying it was a sucking chest wound, as shown in A Real American Hero, issue 310. Do better next time, loser.
Somewhere in the torso area.
Yes, somewhere between neck and belt.
There's an interesting panel on this page, which is this Baroness close up. This one here.
She's under this shroud.
She's under the shroud. It made me think of like a marble effect, like a Tromdoi kind of very intricate marble carving that you sometimes see. I don't know that I've necessarily got a huge amount extra to say about it, but it just struck me as sort of a particularly interesting looking panel.
Yeah, this feels like something that Hama is calling out in his plot, rather than that an artist drawing a Hama plot is adding on their own. Although I've been wrong about that. But also in the previous panel, in panel 1, where you first see it, also look at the painting that's on the wall behind the Baroness's hospital bed. I'm going to assume it's an ancestor of Destro's, who's wearing a cloak and has a big sword. And, there's a pillar and there are these big, curtains in the windows. And so this issue, we are reminded that Destro is a Scotsman, and, he lives in a building with very particular architecture and period details. This is not like a clean chrome Cobra headquarters. It's not a generic base. And another thing like that happens, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on this. On page 5, when Destro is getting an update from his Iron Grenadier captain in Springfield, the sort of the video camera conference call, which I was really hoping would be a Televiper, because that's the thing they come with. But then I thought, no, it's the Televipers would be prisoners in this scene, so it's just going to be Iron Grenadiers. And then I thought, couldn't they have commandeered a No. Hama's going to point out a modern video camera for artist Chris Mooneyham to draw. Anyway, the Iron Grenadier says, your household guards are herding the Cobra Vipers and other non-mutated troops, Destro. And in this panel, we see men wearing kilts with machine guns and with headbands. And we have seen in this run, maybe 6 issues ago, didn't someone sort of first bring the reports when was Baroness and Zartan came to see Destro around 305 or 306. We've seen a couple people in Destro's castle wearing this uniform and not the sort of paramilitary one of the Iron Grenadiers. And I don't remember if we've seen anyone wearing a kilt back in Marvel issue 70 or Marvel issue 108.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident that prior to the sort of the design of the Iron Grenadiers being used, that you had kind of Destro's household guard kind of looking like this with the kilts, and then subsequent to that, it was more generally the Iron Grenadiers that would be used. So yeah, it's an interesting question. I can't recall quite off the top of my head the last time that we would have seen like this household guard in kilts. It's possible it might have even been in the last few issues, but yeah, it's interesting to see them together, the Iron Grenadiers and these household guards in the kind of Scottish military kilt look.
And I do think that's the first time they've been named Your Household Guard. And I jokingly had this thought, the word balloon that launches 100 toy dioramas, toy customs, right? Chris from the Full Force says, I need those kilts in classified, the 6-inch scale line. Okay, so I'm going to point out an art thing. 610 Yojo Daddy says, yes, we need Destro's Sarge from issue 57, I believe, in classified. Destro had his own, a particular sergeant back in issue 57. Is that the issue where Major Blood is pretending to be Destro? So yeah, side by side with Destro. The cover is Lady Jane Flint and Destro. Anyway, okay. So in this issue, there are a couple places where Chris Mooneyham repeats some art, and artists should definitely take that shortcut for two reasons. One, drawing comics is hard. And two, Larry Hama himself has paraphrased, if not quoted, his mentor, Wally Wood, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it's, Mark, maybe you can help me out. It's, don't invent what you can reference. Don't reference what you can't swipe. Don't swipe what you can't copy, right? And the idea is, if you have to draw the Statue of Liberty or a very specific Camaro or motorcycle, and you can find a photo of it, right? Change your storytelling so that you can draw from the photo directly, or trace it, or, right, going a step further, because I think Hama has said that Wally Wood did this, cut it out and comp it onto your arts, right? And illustrators do this, right? There's a splash page from John Byrne, Fantastic Four, splash page from Jack Kirby, Fantastic Four, where characters are like over New York City and the background is like, McFarlane has done this in Amazing Spider-Man. The background is just a black and white Xerox of a photo of buildings in New York City. And then Spider-Man gets drawn on top of it, right? Okay, so Mooneyham on page 5 in panel 4, there's sort of two things happening here. On the bottom panel, the Iron Grenadier says, but the cyborgs could be a major risk. And Mooneyham has copied and pasted the Iron Grenadier's helmet from the Iron Grenadier onto the little screen on the camera. So that's the same piece of art, but it's smaller. And then color artist Francesco Segala has colored it differently, which is totally cool. And there's two things going on. I don't love it when artists copy and paste and reuse art, but I totally understand. So cool, okay. The thing here that's a pet peeve for me is that the Iron Grenadier's helmet on the left side is how we see the Iron Grenadier's helmet from our point of view. And it's not the same as how the camera is seeing it from like 5 inches to the right and 4 inches forward. It's very similar, but technically the helmet in the little screen would be drawn from a different perspective. Now, like I live near a CVS and in the side there's a window. And it's like, there's like a poster with like someone drinking milk and a poster with like someone taking vitamins and a poster with someone like looking at their camera. And it's like, value, CVS, buy this stuff. And like, it happens there. Like someone is taking a selfie and the photo of the person has been like, the person's head has been like copied and pasted and shrunk onto their little camera, even though the camera is like 5 feet closer to them and right by their face. It's like, no, that's my point of view of their face. That's not what the camera sees. So I'm just going to file this under a little distracting, but okay. And then Mooneyham does it again a couple pages later using that Iron Grenadier's head again. And then also when Alpha 001 is walking by a bunch of Cobra zombies, the page where their heads all blow up, mutant cyborgs. This is page 9. There's sort of an A copy and paste where the like row of soldiers that Alpha 001 is walking by. So there's that word balloon, but that is precisely what makes you too dangerous to be sitting around on your thumbs. So the bit of art under that word balloon is copied and pasted on the bottom right, to the right of the like button. And then the art to the right of it is copied and pasted down on the left.
And it's been flipped around.
Yes, Francesco Segala colors it differently. So it reads as like the camera is tracking Alpha 001 as it slithers past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 of these soldiers lined up. And anyway, this is a hard book to draw, and many comics artists repeat things, and my preference is everything always gets redrawn every time, even if it's like the same moment, the same characters in background, like a moment later. Because in my mind, it's like if you're watching a film, it's the difference between pressing record on a camera and I'm just sitting here in front of you and I'm not blinking and I'm just holding still, right? But like there's like a million tiny changes on my face and the air is moving around, versus like you pausing the image or you like taking one frame of this moment of me and repeating it like 100 times so it lasts 5 seconds. That looks like a pause. That looks like a glitch. Okay, enough of that. Mooneyham's art in this issue, lots of textures, storytelling's clear. I love his Alpha 001. I love his Destro. We get to see him draw people at the beach and some cops.
Yeah, we do. So we're down at the beach, which is a bit. It feels a bit like a Hamaism that we've certainly seen. Joes or Cobras sort of, arriving at a beach and shocking the regular beachgoers. Before there was, I'm sure it's happened more than once, but there's
definitely a jingle and a little 10-second promo where you find all the panels where this has happened.
Yeah, at the beach, and but yeah, very early on in this is in the Vosberg era. There was the bit where Dr. Venom and Quinn and Snake Eyes are on that plane, and they're, I think, chucking out all of the stuff out the back to make it sort of make the flight to reach the shore, and then they crash down onto the beach, and there's those those tourists there who are getting sand in their drinks or whatever. So yeah, a return to the beach, and the beachgoers getting shocked by a bunch of shading-looking characters arriving with a mutated Dr. Mindbender and a Serpentor on ice. And a little bit earlier, Chris said, do you have any expectations with regards to overarching story or any storylines you want to see in the future, etc.? And as a more general point, like my expectation from Hama and my hope from Hama is that there's just a sense of like a through line, and that where you've got a subplot that's been introduced and been left, that you return to it. And this is like a really good example that all the way back in issue 310 was when we last saw these Joes, and then 5 issues later, half a year later, we are seeing them. So back in 310, we saw the Joes escaping Cobra Island, just avoiding a strafing attack, and sort of left at sea with Multo there saying, "Start kicking. It's a long way to shore." And it appears that it was, because they're finally getting back to shore with this particular issue. So yeah, it was nice to see that that follow up. Obviously, the Mindbender made an escape. Where did Serpentor's body end up?
That's in the back of, I think, that same ambulance that Mindbender commandeers.
That's right. Yeah, it looks like they're putting them both in the same ambulance. So Mindbender, I think, has ended up with Serpentor's body in the same ambulance that he escaped from. So I think Serpentor is under control of Mindbender once again.
I like this scene where the Joes, someone calls 911 on the Joes. Like, that would happen. Like, I don't want the sort of jokey version of this scene where these like scary guys come out of the water plus Helix. These scary folks come out of this water and someone's like, oh my goodness. And they're like, don't worry, ma'am, we're professionals, right? And she's like, okay. It's like, no, that wouldn't happen. Someone would freak out. And I was a little confused by who's showing up because the page turn when these men with guns show up and one of them yells, all of you, put your hands where we can see them. And all the Joes are on the beach, and Mindbender and the coffin thing are sort of on the bottom of the big panel. Two things are happening. One, I'm sorry, Francesco Segala, there is a color error on this page, which is page 12. It's repeated on page 13 and it's repeated on page 15. All these police and ambulances would have red and blue flashing lights. I'm going to send an email to Post Box the Pit asking for a correction for future editions. Because these flashing white lights to me said something else, right? Like yellow lights are for utility vehicles, like tow trucks or like the phone company, and power lines. And red and blue are for emergency. And I sort of didn't know who was showing up, like on that first page, right? Like very, very small, way in the top left of page 12. You see WAT, so SWAT. And in the top middle of the page, very, very small, you can make out an ambulance. And then it's very clear on the next page. But I wasn't sure sort of what combination, like, are the Joes in a little trouble or are they in a lot of trouble? Is it just the beach police? Is it Pensacola City Police? No, I'm serious. Is it Pensacola City Police? It's SWAT? Oh, that's a big deal, right? Like, and then they talk their way out of it. So it sort of doesn't matter who showed up. But I wanted a little clarity a little sooner.
And Barking Fridge makes the point here that the cops got there super fast. So it's a bit of like comic book compressed time. They're rolling up on the beach. There's someone spotting them and calling 911. And then in the page turn, they're all turning up. But
I think that's making up for how long the Battle of Springfield was taking place for them to swim to shore. Let me jump to the next scene when the ninja team lands in New Jersey. This whole page 16, where I'm not sure who's on the right side of the van, left side that we're seeing. I don't know who's asking, Snake Eyes, Jinx, or Dawn, but someone says, do you remember the route, Scarlet? And Scarlet says, Roger that. And over this whole page and a half, Scarlet, Larry Hama, drives us from McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey to the chaplain's assistant motor pool at Fort Wadsworth on Staten Island. And, sometimes in Spider-Man comics and movies, I want more specificity, like not just New York and buildings that I recognize occasionally, but like call out a street or use a specific subway stop, right? Like, no. What is the difference between this part of Manhattan and that part of Manhattan? And this scene was written by a New Yorker. And this scene was written by someone who wants us to know how to get there. Now, you can argue that it's not necessary, it takes too long, it's not action, it's sort of not G.I. Joe. And it's certainly more than a page, but I found it really charming and kind of funny. And Hama's doing it, I think, to build up to this return to the original pit. Turn the page and, hey, Mark, look, it's some vehicles we haven't seen in a while. I think I'm seeing the battle wagon and the Wolverine, and I think I see the Raider. I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing on the bottom left of this very bluish panel.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure myself, but we've got 4 armored vehicles and tracked vehicles there. We also find out on this page from Scarlet that Sean took a leave after his father's death, with, I guess, the funeral in 302, and then he was on a top hush mission he can't even tell us about. And then everything you can't forget, deny, is, I think that is the clone Snake Eyes saying that.
But it's in quotes. When he says that, he's quoting someone or some organization's slogan.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah, he's quoting Larry Hama's writing on G.I. Joe, I think. So yeah, I've got a suspicion that we might find out. We'll either find out more about this hush hush mission that Sean went on, or Larry is doing this bit where he's laying down some groundwork that he can return to, that he doesn't yet know what that mission is because he's not written it yet, but might, he's giving himself ammunition to return to it in the future. What else did I want to talk about? We also had another line of dialogue from Snake Eyes. We are calling them out. So the second one of Snake Eyes talking, Snake Eyes talk. Snake Eyes talking, Snake Eyes talk. Talking about things he wants to say. He says these powerful words. This must be the new dojo. So they're setting up the dojo in the basement of the original pit, or the original reconstructed pit. And you might remember that previously they had a kind of dojo set up back in the IDW era, I think in the San Francisco base, which they didn't make necessarily a huge point of making a lot of, utilizing too much, but they're sort of creating that now, I think, here.
Mark, do you remember offhand when we last saw the original pit? Was this destroyed way back in the Marvel?
Yeah, it was destroyed way back. They reintroduced it towards the back end of the IDW era. Okay, and they had they kind of had different sub teams of the Joes, sort of based out of the pit in the desert, the pit in Staten Island, wherever it is, near Fort Wadsworth, and a San Francisco base. And yeah, that was where Sean was abducted from at the very beginning of Snake Hunt. Does this mean that San Fran is now closed, Barking Fridge? I don't know for sure, but until we're told...
I think if Hama needs it, it's open, and if Hama doesn't need it, it might be closed, or it's open, but nothing interesting is happening there. I think if editor Alex Antone says to Hama, let's have 20 issues this year, Hama might think, what are some locations I can reactivate? Oh, the dojo in San Francisco.
Yes, Schrodinger's dojo.
Mark, you can just have the mic. I think I've gotten to all my bullet points, so you can wrap this up and finish your thoughts.
So yeah, I think I was just going to call out. We're just spending a bit of time here with the Ninja team at the end of the issue, and it's a kind of a slight callback to issue 66, where they've previously had this Kuji In, which is the 9 hand seals, a system of mudras and associated mantras of 9 syllables, which they are calling out here. Shokai, Paito, Rin, Retsu, Zai, Zen. So there we go. And it's a callback to, A Real American Hero issue 66, which was that.
You said 9, but Sean doesn't say his. Anyway,
he doesn't say what, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. So anyway, that's what it is. And in issue 66, as they're preparing for that rescue mission, which was the country? Was it Barovia? I think so. Where there was Quick Kick and Stalker and Co. And Snowjob had been an outback escaped from. Yeah, so the ninjas went in to rescue them, and they did the sort of similar mantra ahead of that mission. Another I Spy I had was that in the letter column, we had Rob Foster, so one of our listeners on the Facebook group, with a letter, and the reply of which it said, hopefully you picked up last month's issue 314, which was a special mission of sorts, but more on this later. stay tuned. So, interesting little tease. But we do have to get going and call it a day. I will just mention there's the colloquialism from Larry Hama. He's calling out Moby Dick, Queequeg's coffin, which was designed to hold Queequeg's dead body, but instead ended up being refashioned into a life buoy and used to hold up Ishmael. So that is the fridge that they are alluding to. So yeah, there we go.
I'll just say two little things. One more error detected on page 17, those two highway signs that the Joes drive under. I can't say those should be green because I see what Francesco Segala is doing with the palette on this page. But highway signs are green. But maybe what I'm really missing is just some words on them. There needs to be a distance or a exit number.
They look a bit empty, don't they? Yeah.
Yes. But I will say, as with the previous issue 314, I like Francesco Segala's colors. I do feel, as with 314, he's coloring this issue with a little bit more of a light touch than the previous 12 or 13 issues, where I feel like the changes from scene to scene, like a lot of greens and purples, and then a lot of cool blues, and then a lot of reds and oranges. I feel like he's desaturating a little bit from those. He's still changing colors. He's still using really nice textures, and he's still coloring well. I feel like he's coloring this issue and the previous issue a little less aggressively, which is not good or bad compared to the first year of this book. It's just different. I think I do like the more aggressive more, but I also noted that more aggressive took 2 issues to sort of fit Paul Pelletier's run. But it's a solid looking book, and we're done.
So next time on Talking Joe, we will be covering the latest issues as they come out. May 7th, 2025 is when the next issue is out, issue 316. You can find Talking Joe in the usual places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website where you can find those places. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to our backers: Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2, who I think comes with a robotic shark, and Infinite Entertainment. Tim, where can you be found when you're not talking to me?
YouTube channel at Atomic Abe, my store, Hub Comics, my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Perfect. So I think that just remains for us to say, Tim, that
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.